Hi there, classmates. My name is Ashley Black, and this is a recap of my interview with John Sebastian, an instructional designer at Red Hat. Initially, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted the focus of my paper to be, but then after a quick discussion with John, I learned that he did web-based training for sales teams. This led me to focus my paper on the benefits and limitations of e-learning. I was curious to know that in a rapidly changing technological landscape, are instructional designers still able to apply theoretical frameworks like ADDIE and SAM in practice? Let's find out. After graduating from Keller School of Management with a master's degree in human resource management, John Sebastian began his career as a corporate trainer for Xerox. John noted that starting as a facilitator was an easy introduction to ID, as his experience from this perspective has often informed his designs throughout his career. He then transitioned to Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Carolina, where he became the first instructional designer on staff, designing e-learning and instructor-led training for employees on how to process claims. 3 years later, he moved to Red Hat, where he has since served in a variety of positions designing management and leadership training, and most recently e-learning for internal sales teams. In his current role, he designs, storyboards, scripts, and narrates sales training with a small team that includes portfolio managers, developers, and other instructional designers. John's philosophy around instructional design centers on having a high degree of responsibility to both the learner and the facilitator. Specifically noting, as an ID, the worst thing I can do is lead a learner down the wrong path or leave a facilitator high and dry. He puts this philosophy into practice by carefully understanding his audience and communicating with the facilitator throughout the entirety of the instructional design process. John believes that as an instructional designer, it is your core responsibility to get rid of the noise and boil down content into an understandable, succinct message that's easily digested by the learner. In order to achieve this goal, he researches content, identifies important parts of the message, and then designs instruction that is concise and simple to understand. An interesting point that John emphasized during his interview was when he designs training for unfamiliar content, he finds it advantageous to not be a SME. Oftentimes, SMEs can have a hard time reverting back to the basics when trying to educate a learner on their area of expertise. So the instructional designer's unique ability to bridge the gap between the learner and the SME becomes an extremely impactful piece of the organizational learning and development puzzle. When asked if he followed any formal or informal models of instructional design, he mentioned two: ADDIE and design thinking. Interestingly, John notes that because his organization values an open culture, he applies a similar mindset to his practice, viewing all models as flexible. Red Hat is a leader in open source software and operates on principles like creativity, community, collaboration, innovation, and problem solving. And it's these organizational principles that very much influence John's approach to his design process. John's adherence to the ADDIE framework is loose, and he admits that the analyze and evaluation phases are oftentimes skipped due to time constraints. This closely resembles an instructional design shortcut laid out by Morrison, Ross, Coleman, and Kemp to omit certain phases of the model as a strategy to reduce project time. The most unexpected and exciting model John mentioned was design thinking. Tim Brown, CEO of IDEO and author of the book Change by Design, says design thinking is a human-centric approach to creative problem solving that begins by developing a deep understanding of the people for whom a product or service, or in this case, a training program, is designed. He also notes that inspiration, ideation, and implementation occur not in sequence, but as a system of overlapping spaces. By applying the principles of design thinking, John is able to apply the 6 stages of the framework: empathize, define, ideate, prototype, test, and implement, resulting in better instructional products that meet both the needs of the business and the learner. When tasked with a design project, the first and most important question John asks is training the solution? Going on to say that if training is not the right solution, they're still stuck with the problem and you've wasted your time. Relevant literature also comments on the importance of asking whether instruction is the answer. For example, Morrison, Ross, Coleman, and Kemp note that before starting an instructional design project, a designer should first identify the problem in order to determine whether instruction should be part of the solution. If it is decided that a problem could be resolved by instruction, Christensen then asks, what theory or models would be most useful or appropriate to help address this problem. John, too, stressed the importance of choosing the right theory and model by asking questions like, what is the best way to deliver? Is this the most cost-effective? Is this the most time-effective? What approach will make the deepest impact? Referencing ADDIE as the underpinning model of his instructional design process, John notes that the analysis phase is oftentimes out of his scope. Red Hat employs what they call learning and development consultants, who have a broader organizational view and whose sole job is to conduct needs assessments. After a training need is identified, the consultant passes off their findings and analyses to an instructional designer, who then executes the subsequent phases of the ADDIE model. Despite his intentions to follow a linear process, John always anticipates that his process will become more iterative, citing examples like introductions of new stakeholders, shifting timelines, content restructuring, and more. To manage these setbacks, he keeps the design at a high level, structuring a bare-bones outline and asks for feedback before building out a more detailed design. Because John's team outsources the technical development of the training to an offshore vendor, he often serves as a project manager, overseeing the relationship and communication between instructional designers, project team, stakeholders, and vendors. To help manage the process efficiently, he uses Google project management tools and frequent communication of project updates to ensure consistency and alignment amongst team members. Throughout his career, John has worked with a variety of subject matter experts, including trainers, technical experts, consultants, and coaches. John finds working with SMEs that are passionate about their content and deeply invested in the learner most rewarding. In his experience, SMEs who specialize in soft skills training, like leadership, organizational behavior, and management, tend to be more dedicated and responsive than those who specialize in hard skills or more technical content. An explanation for this could be that most soft skills SMEs also facilitate the delivery of that content as well, whereas technical SMEs typically do not deliver instruction. However, more research is needed to confirm this hypothesis. One of the most significant challenges John has experienced in designing instruction are SMEs that are unresponsive. As an instructional designer for sales training, John often has to source technical SMEs who already have full-time jobs, making their availability and willingness to provide information for a project unrelated to their role less of a priority. Camoli and Prestera recommend 4 best practices for handling unmanageable SMEs. First, take ownership of the content gathering process. Make sure you set expectations and learn the basics of the content. Second, plan your content gathering efforts in detail. Make sure you define roles and responsibilities, define risks, and make sure you gain agreement. 3, make a connection with your SME. Make sure you build a rapport, establish credibility, earn their trust. And 4, maintain your focus and that of your SMEs. Use things like reflective listening, and make sure you reiterate your goals and set content review expectations. When asked how the role of the instructional designer was changing, John said, "It is becoming more about content curation rather than content creation." John posits that with the abundance of information available to learners on the internet, the role of the instructional designer is shifting away from creating brand new content and more toward driving learners to the right place to find answers. This thought is echoed in an e-learning industry article that reports that content curation will be a strong trend in the year 2019, noting that LMSs will continue to grow and offer content curation as an important method of sharing information and providing the right experience for learners. John also highlights an emerging trend toward on-demand training that can be accessed anytime, anywhere. According to the Towards Maturity Bridging the Divide 2018 report, 94% of people surveyed want to be able to learn at their own pace and on their own time, and more than half consider e-learning essential to their jobs. Factors that may be influencing this growth include the rising expense of gathering employees for an on-site training, lower training and development budgets, and an increasing demand from learners for more personalized training. It is because of this trend that John's organization has invested in technologies like Articulate Rise, Adobe Connect, and Totara. With the advent of e-learning, training has become more affordable and accessible than ever. Some of the greatest benefits of e-learning include its convenience, its flexibility, and its cost-effectiveness. Distance is no longer a barrier, for e-learning enables learners to access training from any geographic location at any time. This is a significant advantage for corporations who now have the ability to reach an unlimited number of employees all across the world, saving a significant amount in travel and expense budgets. John also sees this as a benefit for a global organization like Red Hat, which employs 13,000 employees in 35 countries. For John, the main benefit of e-learning is an increased level of control. He says, when I hand something off to a facilitator in a classroom, there is a risk that the message isn't going to be communicated accurately. I have more influence on the final result of an e-learning because it's delivered exactly the way I designed it to be. Having spent much of the last 9 years designing e-learnings, John knows firsthand the limitations of adapting content for an online environment. Referencing Bloom's taxonomy, John feels that in his current role designing technical sales training, it is difficult to achieve learner impact beyond level 2 due to both the type of content and the constraints of an asynchronous online environment. Recalling his experience designing instructor-led leadership and management training, John noted he was able to achieve a deeper impact on learners, possibly reaching cognitive processing at level 4 or 5 of Bloom's taxonomy. Although not feasible in his current work, he did offer solutions to increase engagement and deepen impact in instructor-led virtual programs, including breakout rooms, polling, quizzing, discussion topics, and group assignments. The shift towards e-learning adds another layer of complexity to the already challenging role of the instructional designer. Not only do instructional designers have to conduct needs assessments, manage projects, and evaluate training, they must also stay abreast of the latest technologies in the industry. Despite these challenges, John believes many of the fundamental instructional design theories still play a valuable role in his practice today, regardless of the delivery method. As we enter this new evolution in the field of instructional design, John offers a few words of advice for novice designers. First, he stresses the importance of adult learning theory, going on to say, without that knowledge, you're just someone else with an opinion. He asserts that by understanding adult learning theory, an instructional designer can provide the why behind their design. John also recommends that novice designers prioritize their own professional development and attend courses, webinars, workshops, and other training programs. Seeing the way other instructors design courses can offer a fresh perspective and give a novice designer a deeper understanding of different types of approaches. Lastly, John encourages novice designers to get ahead of the technological learning curve by staying current on the latest instructional design authoring tools, virtual delivery platforms, and learning management systems. And that's it. I would like to give a special shout out to my interviewee, John Sebastian. Thank you so much for your time. You are totally awesome. I'd also like to say thank you to all of my classmates in EAC580. You guys rock, and I learned just as much from you all. And lastly, I'd like to thank Dr. Fleener. You've been an incredible professor this semester, and I really hope I get the opportunity to take a class with you again. And one more little thank you. Thank you, Aslan Rao, for helping me out with this presentation.